Welcome once again to what is Module 9 of our work together. And today is going to be a very special day in our course. We're going to focus on the last 4 modules of Year 1 of the diploma. And they're going to be quite different, these modules, from what has gone before. They are more than just a learning experience, but they are being designed and redesigned to prepare you for the next year as Sun X Malta interns and as chapter leaders in your own countries. So first of all, I want to draw attention to the lectures we changed, and then I want to cover the new ones. The old modules 9 to 12 had covered a wide range of learning topics. And these are all now available on the Thinkific platform, and we are expecting you to review them in your own time. We had sessions on education and research, an excellent lecture on culture by Jafar Jafari, the doyen of tourism academic research. We will learn about education from Carlos Vogler, former executive director at UNWTO and a really knowledgeable hospitality veteran. And another session on research by Jennifer Edu, the research head at the European Travel Commission. We had a session on stakeholder engagement by the Sun team. Aspects of this will be covered in the new modules. The old module 11 was called Learning into Action. And here we try to incorporate this into the new modules in a more focused way that I shall be dealing with today. And last, module 12 was all about connecting networks. And we're going to deal with this in a similar way. All the original material will be on the Thinkific platform. And I particularly recommend the lectures by Xavier Font on marketing in a new era, and by Paul Wilkie, a former senior communications VP at Visa, talking about communicating messages. So let me go to the changes and to explain why we've made them. First, this module, module 9. And it's most importantly because we've made a major policy shift at SunX to what we call the pivot to the poorest, with a new focus on the LDC plus states. That is, your states, plus the small island countries who are particularly exposed to climate change because of their coastal zones, and as we've discussed before, who are the least responsible for bringing the planet to this situation. And we will cover today in depth our pledge, a 9-point formal announcement made at the LDC 5 event in Doha a month ago. This event sets a 10-year UN work program for all of the LDC countries. Because of our pledge, we are now integrated into that structure. And so the remaining lectures are going to be how we together, the Cenex Malta team, and you in each of your countries can help us to deliver on these words. So much for Module 9, today's exercise. Module 10 will now be devoted to our upcoming SAYS event, our third annual Strong Earth Youth Summit, which we will bring to the world from Malta. It will be chaired by Leslie Vella, Deputy CEO of Malta Tourism Authority, and our partner and chairman at Cenex Malta. We will look at the goals and the programme and the parts you can play. SAYS will be held on the 27th of this month. Make a note of that date, the 27th of this month. And it's a way we remember the incredible contribution of Maurice Strong to the global sustainable development agenda, and as well as to project to the world how we are advancing his vision for tourism. And we will devote the whole of Module 10 to preparations for the SAYS event. Module 11 will return to our decade strategy and the role that you, as strong climate champions, will play in advancing it from your countries. We will explore the kind of actions you will be expected to undertake in the first year of chapter operations, which is now organised to coincide with your mandatory intern year that you will need to do to secure the climate-friendly travel diploma. And finally, in Module 12, we'll specifically deal with the creation of chapters and building networks within your countries and between them for mutual support. And we'll round up with a review of your work over the past year and how you'll be building on the knowledge base in a constantly evolving world with continuing support from the Cenex Malta team. So you can see a very different approach to this last third of the course this year. We have made a big global commitment publicly, and for example, in Exist, our monthly newsletter, we've gone on record as identifying your countries, the world's poorest countries, as the primary focus of our work in the future. And so what we're going to do is to now work with you for the balance of this first year to prepare you to become operational chapter heads in your own countries starting in September of this year. So let's start with the pledge. It's made to LDC Plus, as we call it. Your 46 countries plus another 50 small island states who are UN members or linked through UN agencies. Again, the full list is in your Thinkific support. But just a quick comment on LDC 5 that was held in Doha and which I attended. It was a Heads of State Summit organized by the Office of the High Representative for LDCs and SIDS. That's a UN body that isn't quite an agency, but is a program. And it's a program run by a Deputy Secretary General of the UN, and it has an executive role in the UN system for the poorest countries, even though much of the activity of the UN for those countries is handled in other agencies. It was set up to give a special focus to the challenges facing these states, and because of its intensification, because of their poverty. Our pledge was made in a special session organized by Microsoft to focus on these states' challenges and, more importantly, on their opportunities. And here, sustainable tourism was singled out for a special session. And a pledge, or to use the UN terminology, quote, an announcement, unquote, is a formal commitment embodied in the summit outcomes. And we are now planning to build on this progressively over time and to put it at the core of our global climate-friendly travel network. Our primary focus will be on your countries. So, to take a look at the pledge in detail, the starting point, item 1, is already completed. Here with you and the scholarships from Malta Tourism and ITS in 2022. So we can put a tick against that immediately. Item 2 and 3 also features you. And this is the key, because in September, we will launch formal chapters in all of your countries. Yes, all 46 countries. And you will be the focal point, at least for your 12 months of internship, when we will be working in total synchronization to help make this happen. Later, in Module 12, we'll go into this in detail and discuss together what you will be called on to do in the first year of operation. It's particularly important for us at SunX Malta, because in one day, we will suddenly become operational in all of the world's poorest countries, with a serious potential to help them better prepare to meet the inevitable crises that I believe most of them are currently quite unprepared for. And we will be using sustainable tourism, climate-friendly travel, as the vector for them to put their focus on the climate challenge. Item 4 shifts us to the creation of a fund, which we will set up to provide scholarships for future attendees on this course, as well as subsistence during the internship phase. And it is our plan between now and September to work to seek funding for subsistence for all of you as you go through the internship phase. And we will look very much for your help as we look for agencies and programs and activities to build this fund up with. We expect contributions from public and private sector sources, as well as from our own climate-friendly travel club, which we have recently set up in order to expand our climate-friendly travel mindset to travelers themselves. And more about that in one of the future lectures. Item 5 references the global promotional activity through our SDG 17 partners. Some 30 of them are currently on board. And we've created another partner company called Climate Friendly Travel Services to manage these relationships and to help to bring them to your countries in a way which is both operationally feasible for our partners and obviously commercially sensible, and provides very low cost, in many cases no cost support for the climate friendly development of your country's travel systems. Item 6 is the novel program we will introduce to engage travelers themselves in our climate-friendly travel network. It will feature a reward-based alternative to the questionable regime of carbon offsets, which until now has been the only way for travelers to respond both to their own environmental conscience and to the increasing pressures that are being placed on them from within the tourism sector and from a whole range of what I'll call World Economic Forum type organizations who are pushing a system of net zero, much of which will rely on carbon offsets, and much of that which is being questioned in almost any newspaper that you pick up these days. Jed Brown, the CEO of the new Climate Friendly Travel Club, will be talking to you about this in one of our future modules. And item 7 is the other half of the climate-friendly travel market equation. Engaging the travel and tourism industry in the network and providing them with good, low-cost or no-cost transformation support. It's important to understand the role we see for you in this. We have developed with our Canadian partner at the Rotman School in the University of Toronto, a ChatGPT-based platform to provide support first to your National Strong Climate Champions group, and then to the staff of those companies who join the registry. We see this as a very important first step in communicating the climate-friendly travel mindset and ethos in the broader community. And in turn, of bringing local issues of relevance to the emerging National Strong Climate Champions group, and through them to the global network. Item 7 is perhaps the piece that makes us particularly unique. and you have heard me talk about this in recent weeks. It's our call for a plan B for all stakeholders in the tourism sector, and that includes all of us. It's based on the largely unheeded IPCC recommendation that we have to, as a society, peak emissions by 2025. We're urging countries and companies not to ignore this inconvenient truth and to establish a plan B to provide a precautionary approach to the increasingly present climate consequences. And what we will do at Sunex Malta is to provide a science-based template to get stakeholders in your countries thinking about how they put a plan B together. And of course, through you, we will remain available to help them with that thinking. This is a very, very difficult task. We understand how difficult it is to rethink traditional economic and lifestyle patterns, especially the core philosophy that you have to have growth as a central development pathway. It's so easy to kick the can down the 2050 road, which anyone can subscribe to, especially if you add to it a net zero concept, which many have described as a kind of get out of jail free card, and I constantly refer to as the man who says he's going to give up smoking and then pays somebody in Africa to stop smoking whilst he continues. But consider why the IPCC called for a 2025 peak. It's because the science tells us that the current trajectory of change will produce increasingly extreme weather patterns and, wait for this, unlivable planetary conditions by the turn of the century if we don't seriously start the greenhouse gas reduction process now. Because the sooner we stop increasing the emissions, the easier it's going to be to turn the curve or bend the curve so that we can cut emissions by 40 to 50% by 2030 and to zero by 2050. And let me remind you, at Sunex Malta, we're talking about greenhouse gas reductions, not just about carbon reductions. And we see Sunex as a kind of tourism voice of conscience here. We recognize today's realities and the fact that we are not going to be the change agent. But what we can be is a group that always tries to keep the bigger climate picture as the existential priority in a world that is increasingly complex, increasingly automated, increasingly fast, and increasingly subject to super intensive weather extremes. And it's a world where business as usual and marketing priorities are all too often the dominant determinants, both in government and in corporate life. So we should be increasing our calls for a plan B in the coming months. And as of September, this will be reflected in our chapter programs. And item 9, the last item, takes us back to the core of the SunX Decade strategy, which we unveiled in 2020 with its headline goal of 100,000 strong climate champions by 2030. Now we are planning to start with 5,000 champions from the LDC states, and we're planning to do this before 2025. It's a sign of our commitment to help your countries to fully engage in a global climate-friendly travel network. So I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to see what questions you have, and we can discuss these issues together. And as of the end of this session, we'll move to the new framework that I've identified today. And for the material which was contained in the old framework, you can find it on the Thinkific platform. So, questions, please.